I wanted to talk about how to showcase your achievements for promotion. And why is this topic important? And particularly, why now? Why this time of the year? Why this season? Because for many people, you are one either at the tail end of a promotion process, and you are at that point where you just need to you are the closing stages, so you need to finalize your promotion. You're at the point where been having the conversations, I hope you have, and you're now at that point where like you're about maybe 8 weeks away from announcement. So right now the promotion is either yours to gain or yours to lose, or you're at the point where you're starting to have real conversations ahead of the new year. For most people, you're still following a calendar year. Of course, if you are not following a calendar year in your organization, you have to be mindful and conscious about what that timeline might look like for you. But if you're following a calendar year, you're probably starting to think about next year and having those pivotal conversations, really starting from your year-end review into your goal setting review for next year, and starting to lay the foundations around what that could look like. So if you are in a corporate space and you're thinking, you know what, this is either the tail end of when I'm going to be promoted, or I'm going to start positioning myself for promotion right now, then you are in the right place. And I really just want to talk about how to showcase your achievements for promotion. So hi there, if you've never met me before, my name is Mary Mashapre Adeyemi. And after 16 years working in banking, I now help high achieving, highly motivated women in corporate build purposeful, profitable, progressive, and pain-free careers. And so I do that through our coaching programs, on demand courses, as well as content on here as well. And so definitely hit follow if you're not following, or add me as a friend if you don't already, if we're not already connected. So let's get into the meat of this, right? So you've been putting in all the work, you've been hitting targets, you've been solving problems, you've been going above and beyond every single day. But it's now promotion time. It's time for you to really push forward to that next level, but you might be struggling to highlight your contributions. And this is one of the biggest problems that I've seen, in particular, both when I was a woman in corporate. It's not that you're not doing the work, but oftentimes maybe the work is not translating. The work is not getting to the place that it's supposed to get to. And so very, very important that, even though you're doing the work, you're learning how to articulate the work. And in many ways, that is actually where a lot of people fall off. It's not that you're not doing the work, but you haven't quite mastered how to articulate the work that you're doing so that the right people take notice. And it's not a shock. It's not a surprise to them. They're very, very clear. So when I was a woman in corporate, this is definitely something that I had to learn. It didn't come naturally to me, for sure, to like speak about the work that I was doing. It didn't come naturally for me to position myself and share it for promotion. But over the years, and having maybe had, I don't know, 7, 8 promotions across my corporate career, you learn the art of positioning yourself for promotion even prior to the promotion even being on the table. You start, it's not at the point when you get a promotion, when you are about to get a promotion, that you start doing this work. You start doing this work consistently, so that it's almost a no-brainer at the point of promotion. In fact, you will be surprised when they promote you, because you're already laying the groundwork, right? And so those are sort of the key things. And I see this again with just a lot of women that I work with, especially when those who come to me to do either our accelerator programs, our MVP program, or they come to me for a bespoke coaching program. They're always talking about promotions, and they're always talking about the next level, and they're always talking about either how to position themselves or why they didn't get the promotion. So extremely, extremely important. So I'm going to give us maybe 4 or 5 kind of key things that I really want you to pay attention to wherever you are in that promotion timeline. Number one, you definitely have to keep a wins journal. And I know we've heard this before. I call it my brag bag. I know this is actually a very, very common what we say tip. So it's nothing new under the sun here, but it's amazing how many people know what to do but don't do it. And so it's not enough to know that you should be keeping a wins journal. The question is, are you actually keeping a wins journal? Are you actually doing it? And so what that looks like is, just imagine the scenario. You're in a meeting with your boss and he asks you for something that you've done. So I asked you for an example, or maybe you're in a one-on-one and he's asking you for an example of how you've maybe added value in this particular year, or your performance review, and is telling you to talk about how you thought the year went, and then you're stammering, right? That's the first stage where you're like, okay, she doesn't even know what she did, or so how is this really going to work? You don't want to be at that point scrambling to remember um what you've done. You really want to be able to confidently pull out a list of all of the things that you've done, and not just the activities, but the results as well as the teachings or the lessons. So think about that. If you don't remember anything, remember this. Think about it as art, A-R-T, that whenever you're keeping a wins journal, you keep a journal of your activities, your results, and the teachings, right? And the teachings could either be the things that experience taught you, or the teachings that experience can help others, like where you can share, like basically your subject matter expertise around the topic. So make sure that you are actively keeping something, a repository of things that I've done, the impact that is made, to the extent that is possible. Make sure like that is a monetary impact, or at least a quantifiable impact. Let's put it that way. So it can be quantifiable in terms of money. It could also be quantifiable in terms of time saved, people impacted. There has to be something that kind of makes it tangible and quantifiable. That always makes a massive difference when you're translating activities to results. So I see this again all the time. Someone says to me, I led a client project. Okay, I led a client project. So that what happened after after you led the client project? What was the impact of the client project that you led? Someone says, I underwrote 10 deals. Okay, I underwrote 10 deals. You can stop there, but obviously that's just activity. How do you move from activity to achievement? It's when you start saying things like, I underwrote 10 deals, and those 10 deals brought in $200 million to the firm, and $10 million in revenue, and helped us reach or close 5 new clients. That's when it starts to make a difference, because you are able to articulate how the activity what you're spending your time on every single day is moving the needle in the direction that the organization wants to go, right? So that's really why it matters. So and it's very, very easy to forget small victories, right? When you're always focused on the next task, it's very easy to go from deal to deal, transaction to transaction, accomplishment to accomplishment, and you forget. And so a wins journal ensures that you are not forgetting, right? That you are keeping things top of mind. This is also where you can keep things like testimonials. People are sending, testimonials of the work that you're doing, or they're saying, thank you, or they're, saying, giving you gratitude, or giving you feedback. You can also put this file together so that you are actively keeping a repository of things. And in many ways, actually, you should be almost sharing these wins on a regular basis. And that brings me to point number 2 here, is you should always be building personal case studies for the work that you're doing. And so if you've been in the banking world, we see this all the time. And I think you also see it in consulting. Say you've won a client, a deal or something, a transaction with a client, and then the deal team puts together a case study of basically how we reached out to the client, what we did, who came together to make the transaction happen, how we executed the project for the client, what were the results, and what are the next steps, right? It's just a mini case study. We need to get into the habit of also building case studies for ourselves, right? And so, when you're in front of a promotion panel, you have all that information, in front of you. And that case study could look like, just again, keeping in line with things like, okay, look, I basically started this job where I was promoted. My last promotion was at this point. Since this time, I have undergone these are the ways I have upskilled myself. These are the activities I have done, the results that I have generated for the firm. These are the various promotions or levels of progression that I have achieved. These are the new layers of work that I've taken on, because you'll be surprised how much your job has changed when you compare what you were doing, say 2 years ago or 3 years ago, to what you're currently doing now. There's a lot of scope creep that happens even within the same title band. And, it's important for you to, first of all, note it down so you can appreciate it. And then the people who are making decisions for around your promotion can also see that actually, yes, the person we hired that was doing work at this level is has definitely expanded their remit, right? Has definitely expanded their remit since they started at the firm. And so keeping that personal case study of, how you've grown, the problems you've solved, the way you approach problem solving, your measurable results is like, a really good thing for you to be doing, in particular as you are starting to articulate and position yourself, for promotion. Storytelling is a powerful tool. And it's one thing to say that you're great at your job, is another thing to have a very clear picture that shows people that these are how your skills have evolved, and this is the difference that you have made over a period of time. The third thing I definitely want to share then is, how do you define what really matters, right? So I always use this analogy to say, it doesn't really matter if what you're doing is good, but if the person you're doing it for doesn't need that thing, it immediately diminishes the value of the activity or the service. So think about it like this. If somebody gives you let's think about it. Somebody gives you a notebook. Okay, they give you a notebook, is great. A notebook is useful. It's not like a notebook is not useful. It's great. It's not useful. But in where you have maybe 20 other notebooks in your home, a new notebook, although nice, may not make a difference to you. However, think about those moments when you are literally at the brink of, like, you're at death's door, and you're at the brink of like falling over because you haven't had a meal all day, and somebody just comes and gives you, I don't know, half a glass of Sprite or a glass of water, or they give you some French fries from Mackie D's, even if you don't usually eat Mackie D's. The relief and the elation that you experience because you are at the point of need, and that thing is particularly meeting that need, is another level. And so, very, very convoluted example, but the point I'm making is that for you to really demonstrate value, it has to be at the point where you're meeting a clear need. And this is where I always talk about aligning very clearly and communicating how the work that you're doing is aligning with the teams and organizational objectives, right? So instead of just going into like a review or a performance conversation and just reeling out generic accomplishments, although they are good and they're great, it is important. I think where it moves the needle is when you're able to say, and these are the team goals, and this is how what I have done has either helped achieve the team goals in its entirety or has contributed to the team goals. And so and pro tip actually, because even in selecting the type of work that you're doing, you need to almost start from there. Like, that is the end that you need to have in mind, right? If you have that end in mind, then you're able to work backwards and now decide, what type of work should I be doing so that I can have this type of story to tell at the end of the year, or at the midpoint of the year. I need to have this type of promotion story to tell. And so what type of activities am I clear on the strategic objectives of the company, of the department, of my team, and how am I then tailoring my work to achieve that? And that's the difference between when you're doing what I call busy work or when you're doing like relevant work. or valuable work, right? You can be doing busy work where it's good. There's nothing wrong with doing what you're doing, but it's not really contributing to anything of importance in that moment. I remember sharing in my book Visible Strengths, like how I ended up doing like a project. It was an amazing all singing, all dancing project, but really my boss didn't care about that particular project. This is a good few years ago now. So it was a good thing for me to do. I learned a lot in the process. It was helpful, but it just wasn't based on the things that the team were busy doing. My time was best served elsewhere. And so, my manager was just kind of saying, this is good, but I wish you had kind of come to talk to me to ensure that the thing that you were spending the most of your time doing was actually beneficial for the team in this season. And it was a bit of a slap on the face, but it was a big lesson that I learned. And so one of the things you need to do in order to get to a point where you're able to articulate very strong contribution is to first of all understand the team goals and then tailor your activities very, very clearly to that, right? Decision makers need to see how you are moving the needle. They want to see how you're connecting your work with their priorities so that it's easier for them to see your value. Okay. Now the fourth thing I want you to really think about, in this journey to you getting promoted is number one, you just have to not be afraid. You have to not be afraid to speak up, right? Work doesn't speak, people do. And so you're doing good work. I'm making an assumption that you're doing good work and that the quality of your work is not in question. It is really how you articulate and pay attention. So make sure like this is the point where in meetings, you have to start sharing like the success of the things that you're working on. I talked about case studies before. You have to start sharing this verbally at any opportunity you have. And instead of feeling like you're bragging, just understand that this is just you letting people know the value that you're bringing. I always say it's not self-promotion, it's value promotion. Again, in the Visible Strengths book, I talk about the fact that some of the biggest organizations in the world spend north of 20 of their revenue every single year just marketing. And it is your responsibility actually in your career to be a chief marketing officer. So I teach this a lot when I'm working with my both my group and my private clients, how to embody, CMOU, right? The chief marketing officer in your career. So how are you going to embrace storytelling, marketing the work that you're doing so that it can generate more opportunities for you, right? That's how you sell yourself in your career. So you can't be afraid to speak up. You cannot be afraid to speak up. And I understand that piece of I don't want to seem I don't want to seem aggressive, I don't want to seem ambitious, I don't want to seem whatever it is, but in the end, it's the person that speaks the loudest that gets it, right? And now we've seen that multiple times in corporate, that it's not necessarily the person who is the best for the job that gets it. Is the person who's practically loudest at the job that oftentimes gets it, right? Loud work always generally wins, right? Generally, typically, loud work wins. And so the other day I was giving an analogy to someone and I said, we talk about, best-selling books. Nobody ever said best written books. The books that that I get the title bestseller are those that are best sold. It doesn't mean that the best book of the topic. It doesn't mean that have the best content. It just means that the best that were sold, marketed, right? So there is, the world that we live in, both in and out of the workplace, values things that are best sold. We're seeing consistently how people with very mediocre content are winning in the marketplace because they are taking their mediocre content and speaking more about it. Whereas people who literally have top notch content, top notch thought leadership are not winning because they are not talking about the work that they're doing, right? And so mediocrity will always win when excellence is silent. Mediocrity will always win when excellence is silent, right? So practice talking about your wins in a way that feels natural and confident. Make sure that you are, not again talking not just about the activities that you've done, but actually the achievements. And what helps oftentimes in this whole thing of this makes me feel arrogant or so and so is think about it from the perspective of why you're telling this person this story. I'm not just telling you to brag. I'm telling you so because there's something in there for you to learn. There's something in there that's going to help you, right? So when you think about it as I'm talking to people about the value that I've contributed that's going to be helpful to them. And it's easy because when you're thinking about when you have already thought about the work that you're doing in the context of the value you're adding, then it becomes supernatural to bring those two things together, where you're then able to say, listen, I just finished this project, we just did this work, we had this results. I'm telling you about it now because I think it's going to inform the next phase of the project that you're working on, or it's going to help you position your product better for this clients when you're aware of the work that we're doing. So it's now really thinking about the work that you're doing as value promotion, not self promotion. So hopefully that will help you and make you feel better, because ultimately, if you don't advocate for yourself, who will? So speaking up ensures that the hard work that you do doesn't go unnoticed, and that decision makers will see you as someone who can take ownership for their contributions. Extremely, extremely important, right? And the final thing that I would share here, and there are many more things that I would share, but I'm just picking up some of the things that were of most importance when I think about the work that we've been doing, in particular over the last sort of 18 months with our clients, is that's what I'm sharing here. But there's a whole lot more that gets you to become promoted. But most, if you can get these ones right, you're pretty much there, right? And then the final thing I would share is definitely seek feedback. Seek feedback along the way. Seek feedback early and often. This is one of the biggest things. Is we have a conversation at the beginning of the year, we keep on doing what we're doing, and then we're waiting to the end of the year to now know, like, okay, what's going on. And in particular, in organizations that don't necessarily have formal structures of promotion or timelines or formal structures of performance review, this can be a big miss, right? Where you tell somebody, I want to be promoted, I'm angry for promotion, and you don't really have an active conversation beyond that. And then at the end of the year, you're disappointed because you don't get it. And I shared a post on my feed, and you can take a look at my feed about, like, what are some of the telltale signs that you're probably not going to get the promotion anyway. Even if you're working really hard, there's some telltale signs that can be warnings that hey, you might be expecting this promotion, but this promotion is actually not coming. And so there's some things like you can take a look at some of that content that I put together a carousel there. But it's definitely important. So seek feedback early and often. After every major project, before you move on to the next thing, take time to gather feedback from the team. Not just feedback on um, like the work, but also feedback on your contributions, feedback on your leadership, if that's the case, feedback on what could have been better, feedback on how you could have worked better with others. Make sure, and then also implement the feedback going forward. One of the biggest problems I find when I'm working with high achieving women in work is actually you're giving feedback and we don't absorb the feedback. We almost take the feedback as a slight. But we've heard this maybe several times when people say feedback is a gift, right? Because people can pretty much opt out of telling of like telling you what you need to work on. Actually, people feel very uncomfortable with the concept of feedback. Most people feel very uncomfortable with the concept of giving feedback or even receiving feedback. But the key thing is, if someone takes their time to give you feedback, the best response you can have is to absorb it, reflect on it, and decide what you want to do with it. But you need to do something with it. And if you're actively ignoring it, let there be a reason why. And if you're not ignoring it, then implement something in it, because it's just helpful. You will never ever bypass a lesson you're supposed to learn. And that is where, and that's why we keep on repeating classes. If you never learn the thing you're supposed to learn, you will keep on coming back to that lesson until you learn it. Right? So ensure that you're getting feedback from your peers, your managers, managers, your business partners. You're getting feedback across and vertically in the organization, right? This also helps you control perception, right? That helps you let people know that, number one, you're still, and when you're reporting around feedback, you're still telling people, I'm still interested in getting promoted. You basically effectively doing that, but also you're getting buy-in into your process. There's nothing that gets people more supportive of you in a promotion process than when they feel like they're being pulled in to invest in there with you. So asking for feedback not only serves you, also serves people who are giving feedback. So I mean, there's much more I can talk about in this session, right? But I don't want this to be too long. But yeah, so those are sort of like just a recap on those five things I just shared right now. Is, you know, if you want to showcase your achievements for promotion, number one, keep a wins journal. It helps you keep your accomplishments top of mind, so you're not scrambling when it's important. Number two, learn to build personal case studies around who you are in the office, but also the work that you're doing every single day. Um, Number three, align your achievements to your team, department, and company goals. In fact, this is the first thing you should be doing at any point. Make sure, like, at the end of the, you know, at any given time, you know exactly the story you are trying to tell. You don't just get to the end of the year and then start trying to work backwards. You start with the end in mind, which is achievement and contribution of the goals that has been clearly outlined. And then the story you're trying to tell every single year, every single day, you're thinking, how is my every single day showing up here? How am I contributing actively to this? Right. That is how you tell better career stories and tell better promotable stories, right? And then the fourth thing is, do not be afraid to speak up. Like, people, you know, work doesn't speak, people do. Work doesn't speak, people do, right? And if you don't speak up, as I said before, you know, mediocrity always wins when excellence is silent. Mediocrity always wins when excellence is silent. So always make sure that you are speaking. Otherwise, you will find yourself in a position where you are upset that somebody who is less deserving, less technical, less sharp, less of a leader is getting what you're supposed to be getting. But, you know, they deserve to get it because they've put in the work in communicating or in doing whatever politicking or whatever they needed to do in order to get there. And then, you know, the final thing I said is, you know, seek feedback early and often. Seek feedback early and often, right? It keeps you in check. It gives you milestones. It helps people. It pulls people into your promotion process, and you know, and just gets them sort of bought into the process and part of your process, so that they're also helping you celebrate the win at the end, because it now becomes a collective success, not an individual one, right? So right. So again, so bottom line of all of this, right, is that promotion isn't just about doing great work, right? Yes, work is important. It starts from doing good work, but it's not just about that. It can't be just about that. It's about making sure that other people, the key people, key stakeholders, impactful people, people that really, you know, need to know, are very well versed with the impact that you are making, right? So track your wins, align them to team goals, share your story. All of that it will make you feel ready, and be seen as ready when the time comes for that promotion. So the earlier you start doing this, the better. If you are ready to take this to the next level and you want some accountability around that, you want some you know, if you ready, you know, you want some accountability around that, you want a you know, some help, you want some coaching around that, you want a strategic plan around that for the next promotion cycle, then it is time to get in touch, right? This is the work that I do, and this is the work that I love to do, is helping, you know, women in corporates really grow into leaders, whether it's getting promoted, whether it's getting greater career clarity, whether it's transitioning into more fulfilling career pathways, whether it's building leadership muscle, or whether it is winning, you know, and getting what they deserve in terms of promotions, layers of progression, pay rises, all of that type of stuff. So if you are about to get promoted, if you are thinking about how to organize yourself strategically for promotion, then please get in touch. I would love to have a conversation. I would love to work with you. So if you send a DM, you know, maybe in response to this video, or you said put a comment right at the bottom, then we can connect, or go to my link in bio and just book a clarity call, actually. So if you go to my link in bio, you book a clarity call, then we can you can apply to work with me, and then we can then, you know, get on the phone and talk about, you know, exactly what you're trying to achieve, what are some of the obstacles that might be in your way, or maybe some of your blind spots that you need to kind of, look at. And then I'll also talk to you about which one of our programs could be the next best step for you, if any. So with that, I would wrap up this live. With that, have a lovely Tuesday, and I'll see you next week. Take care.